I met Marla during my final year of grad school. I was working part-time at a bookstore cafe near campus in Portland, just enough to stretch my student loan, and she became a regular. Always the same table, always the same tea, always surrounded by a fortress of textbooks and color-coded notes. She wasn't the type who tried to stand out, but somehow she did. There was something about the way she read, head-tilted eyebrows, pulled together in focus like the rest of the world had quieted for her. I noticed that she nursed the same cup of tea for hours, so one evening I said, "You know, refills are free, right?" She looked up, caught off guard, then smiled. "Even for tea." That's how it began. We didn't fall fast. It wasn't a whirlwind. It was a slow, steady build, late-night walks, after my shift, shared leftovers debates about art versus utility. She was studying art history and could lose herself for 20 minutes explaining why Caravaggio used shadow like a weapon. I was focused on finishing my thesis and lining up interviews, but Marla made the stress feel lighter, like I was still allowed to enjoy things. Our first unofficial date was a gallery opening. She'd invited me offhandedly like it wasn't a big deal. I went because I wanted to watch her in her element. She moved through the exhibit like the art responded to her presence. I didn't understand half of what I saw, but I didn't care. I wasn't there for the art. After I graduated and landed a job at a financial firm, we moved in together. Small apartment, thin walls, just enough space for two people to build something. I worked long hours. Marla worked at a museum gift shop while grinding through her masters. The balance wasn't perfect, but we made it work. She started sketching out boutique ideas at our dining table, blending vintage fashion with local art, a curated space called Threadlight. At first I thought it was just talk. But she started making real plans, floor layouts, supplier research marketing strategy. It wasn't a hobby, it was a blueprint. One night she looked at me and said, "Someday, when we're ready, I want to build this. Not just for me, for us." And I believed her. My grandfather died in late February, a man I barely knew and spoke to even less. He lived alone in Idaho, played bridge with strangers at the VFW, and sent me a birthday card every other year with his name typed instead of signed. When the estate lawyer called, I thought it was a scam. But sure enough, I'd been left $82,000 after taxes. It didn't feel like a gift. It felt like an unfinished sentence, an obligation wrapped in money. My first instinct was to be responsible, put it into index funds, maybe finally start that house fund. I wasn't looking to make any sudden moves. Marla was the one who turned the idea inside out. She didn't bring it up right away. For weeks, she didn't even ask about the money, but I could tell it was on her mind. Every now and then I'd catch her lingering a second longer over her sketches or clicking through listings of vacant storefronts like she was preparing herself not to hope. Then, one night in April, she sat down across from me at the kitchen table with a binder. She'd color-coded tabs, inventory suppliers, branding financial forecasts. "I don't want to assume anything she said, but I'd like to show you something I've been working on. Just look." And I did. The plan was solid. She'd identified 3 potential neighborhoods undergoing revitalization, analyzed competitors, even mapped foot traffic trends. Her supplier list was tight and local. She'd budgeted for build-out marketing and 6 months of operational loss. She wasn't dreaming anymore. She was planning. What if I said later that night we used some of the inheritance to launch Threadlight? She blinked like I'd spoken a language she hadn't expected to hear. "Are you serious?" "I've done the math," I said. "It's not reckless. And your plan is stronger than most I've seen." She hesitated. "But that's your future, your security." "This is our future," I told her. "We'd be investing in something real, something yours, but also ours." We spent the next few weeks refining the plan. I connected her with Jonah, a friend from grad school who had experience in retail startups. He helped her tighten the vendor contracts and rethink her launch strategy. I negotiated with a local contractor for renovations, and we started scouting properties on weekends like it was a second job. By early June, we'd signed a lease on a modest storefront at the corner of 28th and Fremont. The space had potential exposed brick-high ceilings, 2 big display windows facing the street. Rent was reasonable, and the neighborhood was on the edge of an arts district. I wired the down payment. First and last month's rent insurance, build-out costs, inventory, branding. It came to just over $65,000. Before we opened the books, I insisted we put everything in writing. Not because I didn't trust her, at least that's what I told myself, but because I'd seen too many partnerships dissolve without a trace. We drew up a simple agreement. I was a silent partner with 51% ownership, entitled to a proportional share of profit or payout if the business ever sold. She bristled a little when I brought it up. "This feels transactional," she said quietly. "It's protection," I replied. "For both of us. We named it Threadlight." She came up with it, said it sounded like something soft and strong at the same time. I liked that. We toasted with cheap champagne in the empty space paint cans, still open, the air full of sawdust and new beginnings. I remember looking at her that night, full of light and laughter, and thinking this was what commitment looked like, 2 people building something with both hands. I didn't know it then, but somewhere between her sketches and my spreadsheets, the definition of ours had already begun to shift. Threadlight opened on a soft Saturday morning, sunlight spilling through the storefront windows like it had been waiting for us. Customers trickled in, drawn by the minimal signage and curated displays. Marla moved through the space like she'd lived there for years, adjusting hangers, chatting with strangers like they were old friends. I stood near the counter, mostly staying out of the way, helping when she needed me, troubleshooting the POS system, double-checking invoices. For the first few weeks, it felt like we were in sync. She was exhausted but radiant, running on adrenaline and ambition. The vintage pieces she'd selected moved well, especially the denim jackets and repurposed silk tops. She'd post behind-the-scenes shots on social media, candid photos of her steaming fabric or sketching signage. It was honest and understated, like her. Then Zora started coming around. She was Marla's cousin, a few years older, with a rotating list of side hustles and an Instagram bio that read, "Creative Disruptor, Intuitive Strategist, Herbal Freedom Coach." I met her for the first time during our 3rd weekend in business. She walked in mid-afternoon, wrapped in layers of gauzy linen, and greeted Marla like she was returning from a vision quest. "I love this space," she said, spinning slowly, arms outstretched. "It's got real divine feminine energy." Marla laughed, a little embarrassed, but didn't disagree. Zora started visiting regularly after that, offering unsolicited branding insights, rearranging displays, suggesting product tags like liberation layers and womb-worthy wear. I brushed it off at first. Every new business draws opinions. But Zora's influence grew louder, and slowly it started to stick. Marla created a separate Instagram just for the boutique. At first it was what we'd planned: product shots, local artist spotlights, customer features. Then came the filters, the soft focus self-portraits, the captions filled with hashtags I didn't recognize. Boss energy, sovereign style, self-made mogul. She started wearing things from the shop that she used to call costumey statement earrings, graphic tees, with slogans like, "Claim your power and capitalism can't cage me." I noticed her spending more time composing photos than fulfilling orders. When I asked if she needed help updating inventory, she waved me off. "I'm building brand identity," she said. "That's what people connect with." Zora encouraged a redesign of the front space, shifting away from curated vintage toward themed collections with empowerment slogans. She pitched an intention corner where shoppers could feel aligned while browsing herbal sprays and affirmation decks. I questioned the margins. Marla said I was being too analytical. "You're not really seeing the vision," she told me one night, her tone flat. "I'm seeing a change," I replied. "That's all." It got worse when Zora began using language I'd only ever seen on wellness blogs. "You need to clear the masculine static from your business flow," she told Marla once while I was standing right there. Marla didn't disagree. She just nodded thoughtfully like she was listening to wisdom. Soon after, Marla stopped inviting me to team meetings. Then she moved our shared business calendar off the platform we both used. I didn't even realize until I missed a vendor call we'd scheduled together. "I need space to lead without interference," she said when I brought it up. "I'm not interfering," I said. "I'm your business partner." She paused. "You're the investor. That's not the same thing." The line landed sharp and clear. We had gone from ours to hers, and I hadn't even noticed the drift. By the end of that month, I was checking the business Instagram more often than I was walking through the store. Every post felt like a version of Threadlight. I didn't recognize Marla posing in curated outfits, quoting empowerment gurus, captioning product shots with phrases like "channeling my highest self." The boutique was evolving, but not in the direction we'd mapped together. And slowly, quietly, I began to wonder if I was still part of the story she was telling. I came home on a Tuesday night to find Marla already sitting at the kitchen table, her phone face down beside her, the air tight with something unspoken. She didn't look up when I walked in. Her hands were folded neatly in front of her like she'd been rehearsing what came next. "We need to talk," she said. The four most mechanical words in modern language. I dropped my keys into the bowl by the door, slower than usual, trying to match the pace of what was clearly choreographed. She looked at me without flinching. "I've outgrown this relationship." I didn't say anything at first. I couldn't. She sounded like she was reading a line from someone else's script. And maybe she was. She continued, steady and cold. "I'm in a different place now, vibrating at a higher frequency. I need someone aligned with that energy." I glanced down at the table. The engagement ring my grandmother's resized and reset was resting on a paper napkin like it had been plucked off her hand and discarded mid-meal. "Is this about the business?" I finally asked. "It's not about Threadlight," she said. "It's about growth. Mine." And that was it. She packed a bag and left that night, heading to Zora's apartment, though she never actually said her name. She didn't have to. The apartment was suddenly quiet in a way that didn't feel like peace. I didn't touch the ring. I left it where she'd placed it, not out of sentiment, but because I didn't know what to do with it anymore. 2 days later, Marla posted a photo on the boutique's Instagram, her standing by the front window, arms folded, eyes tilted skyward. The caption read, "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from what no longer serves your highest purpose." Self-love. Alignment. New beginnings. Zora commented, "So proud of you, Queen. Men fear women who rise." By the end of the week, 3 of our mutual friends had stopped responding to my texts. Another sent a message that read, "Saw Marla's post. Just checking. Were you okay?" Like I'd been outed for some quiet abuse no one had named yet. Then came the DMs I wasn't supposed to see, screenshots forwarded from a friend who hadn't yet picked a side. Marla had told people I controlled her financially, that I monitored every expense, and had undermined her confidence as a woman in business. She never said my name directly. She didn't have to. The narrative was already shifting in her favor. Online, she was the empowered founder who had overcome a suffocating relationship to thrive. I didn't respond, not publicly, not even to the people who reached out with thinly veiled judgment or feigned concern. I knew any reaction would only feed the story she was telling. Instead, I pulled the file box out from under the bed. Contracts, invoices, bank transfers, emails, evidence of everything we'd built together and how much of it I'd quietly underwritten. I began sorting through each page, making copies, highlighting signatures, printing backups. If she wanted to rewrite our story, I was going to make sure I kept the original draft. The lawyer's office smelled like old carpet and stale coffee, but the man behind the desk was sharp, brisk, and surprisingly familiar with cases like mine. "You're in a better position than most," he said after reviewing the partnership documents. "Your name is on the lease, the invoices, the business registration. Silent partner or not, you're legally an owner." I asked what my options were. He outlined them in plain language for us: a sale, and divide the assets, negotiate a buyout, or assert control through the existing agreement. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity and my investment back. We sent a formal letter to Marla's new attorney, someone Zora knew full of vague feminist jurisprudence jargon and unnecessary indignation. It didn't matter. The facts were on my side. The letter was straightforward: acknowledge my legal stake and begin the buyout process, or dissolve the business and divide what remained. Silence would not be interpreted as consent. At first, there was no response, just more curated photos on Threadlight's account, more filtered affirmations about rebirth and resilience. But I could see the cracks forming. Sales were slowing. Inventory wasn't moving. A few of the original customers I'd met in the early weeks had left reviews saying the boutique felt less authentic and more like a selfie backdrop than a store. Then Zora's downfall began. It started quietly, an anonymous Twitter thread compiling years of her questionable posts. Jokes at the expense of people with disabilities, a photo from Coachella wearing a headdress, snarky comments about poor people needing to align their energy. Screenshots spread fast. By the end of the week, her brand sponsors had dropped her. A skincare collab vanished overnight. She deleted half her accounts. And just like that, she stopped showing up in Marla's photos. I never said a word about it. I didn't have to. Not long after Marla texted me. First it was a simple, "Hey," then "Hope you're doing okay." Then, 2 days later, "Coffee." Sometime I didn't reply. She sent another the following week: "I've been thinking about everything. Maybe we could talk." No pressure. Still nothing from me. I wasn't playing a game. I just had nothing to say that wouldn't already be written down, dated, notarized, or backed by documentation. Emotionally, I had already stepped out of the room. Meanwhile, the boutique's posts grew sparse, more recycled than radiant. The likes dwindled. Engagement dropped. The curated persona couldn't hold the weight of reality anymore. When her lawyer finally responded, the tone had shifted. No more grandstanding. Just negotiation. That was when I knew the facade had collapsed, and all that was left was Marla standing in the ruins of the version of herself she thought the world would adore. And still part of me wondered who I would meet if she walked back through the door. She asked to meet in person. No lawyers, no pretense, just the two of us. We sat across from each other at a cafe we used to like, the kind with strong coffee and mismatched chairs. Marla looked tired, not performatively worn down, but genuinely hollowed out. The layers of style she once curated so carefully were still there, but they didn't sit right, like clothes meant for a role she no longer believed in. "Thanks for coming," she said, voice low. I nodded, said nothing. "The boutique is struggling," she admitted. "I need more capital." I let that hang in the air before I laughed. Not loudly, not cruelly, just the sharp, tired kind of laugh that lives on the edge of disbelief. "You want me to invest again," I said. "After you erased me from the entire thing, I was hurt," she said quickly. "People say things when they're, 'No, I cut in.' They don't. Not like that, not publicly, not for months." She stared at the table, fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "I'm sorry. I mean that." "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "Two options. One, we sell everything, split the assets according to the agreement, and walk away. Two, you post a public correction acknowledging my role and investment. Then, over 5 years, you buy out my share with interest." She looked up then, blinking, swallowing hard. "I can't afford to buy you out." "Then start saving," I said. "This is the generous option." A long silence stretched between us. Finally, she nodded. 3 days later, Threadlight's Instagram went quiet. No selfies, no affirmations, just a single black square with white text. This business was made possible through significant investment from my former partner, Eli Harrington. Claims suggesting otherwise were misleading. I apologize for any confusion. It wasn't a confession, but it was close enough. The legal paperwork followed. She would manage day-to-day operations. I would retain 51% ownership with monthly repayments secured by contract. No more messaging, no more spin, just numbers and consequences. I didn't feel triumphant, just finished. And as I left the cafe that day, I realized what I'd taken back wasn't the business, it was the truth. I never posted about it. No long captions, no subtle digs, no reclaiming of the narrative. I let the silence speak for itself. The monthly payments came in wired like clockwork. I funneled every dollar into a scholarship fund for undergrad business students, those with ideas but no safety net, no silent partners. I kept my name off it. That wasn't the point. Threadlight changed too. Slowly then, all at once. The neon signs came down. The empowerment corner disappeared. Vintage pieces returned to the front displays. Marla ran it quietly. No more curated posts, no more borrowed mantras, just racks of clothes and customers who actually came to shop. Some of the friends who had distanced themselves started circling back. A few sent awkward texts, others resurfaced like nothing had happened. I didn't chase apologies. I didn't need them. I understood that people follow whatever story is easiest to believe. Drew and I grabbed a beer one night. He said, "You handled it better than I would have." I shrugged. It wasn't grace, it was exhaustion. When the university asked me to speak to their startup incubator, I agreed. Not as some guru, but as a cautionary voice. I talked about equity agreements, emotional due diligence, and the difference between partnership and projection. A few students stayed after to ask real questions, the kind I wished I'd known to ask back then. I started seeing someone new. Her name's Layla. She's grounded in a way that makes the room quieter, not louder. She asks questions and listens without waiting to reply. She doesn't talk in hashtags. The ring stayed in the safe deposit box untouched. Not because I couldn't bear to look at it, but because I didn't want to forget what it cost me. There's a fine line between investing in someone's dream and financing their delusion. I learned that line the hard way, but at least this time I kept the receipts. Would you give someone a second chance if they betrayed both your love and your trust? Is public apology enough to undo private betrayal? What would you do if someone tried to erase your role from their success story?